Oh, I don't want this banner on.
Oh,
Do we
you
want
don't
this banner on? You don't, right?
We don't have to use it.
All right, we should be on. Welcome, everybody.
Welcome.
You're on
Happy
early.
Thursday.
Happy Thursday. Hope everybody's having a good week so far. Looking forward to kicking off this fun panel session.
Absolutely. We're just going to give it a few minutes and then we'll kick off the panel discussion. But if you're just joining us, feel free to add where you're joining us from in the comments, and if you're job searching, what role you're pursuing. You can add those to the comments and then we'll be able to see them, and it's great to know where you're coming from. So I'm Nashville. I'm from Nashville, Tennessee, and UG, you're from Seattle, right?
Yeah, based out here in Seattle. Then we have folks join us from all over the world. I'm sure we will. So I'm looking forward to seeing where y'all are from. You can drop in the comments, and we're excited to get started here. In just a moment, we're going to give it a minute for folks to pile in as we wait for everybody to get going here. So
yeah,
we're excited to have you, and we have a good panel starting soon.
Yes, absolutely. This is our first LinkedIn Live that we've done in a few months. So we're really excited to get back on the LinkedIn Live train.
Yeah, we'll be doing more of these too throughout. It's on the topics of like job search and career advancement and things like that. So again, we're excited to have you. We're going to jump in a moment here. But while we wait, again, if you want to just drop in the comments where you're calling in from, we always like to hear or see where folks are dialing in from around the world. And also, if you're currently pursuing a role, what type of role are you pursuing? Drop that in the comments as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Daniel said he's calling in from his couch. Fair enough.
I love it.
It's a good spot to call in from. All right. Well, with that, it looks like, let's see, Chapel Hill, North Carolina, Chicago. So folks are piling in now, which is good. Love to see it. Looks like the comments are a little delayed, but it's all good. All right. Yeah. With that, go ahead and get started.
Okay. Let's do it. All right. So welcome everyone. Thanks so much for joining our LinkedIn Live. Today, we're going to be talking about the hiring manager's point of view. So we all know that this is a crazy competitive job market, and there's been a lot of, discussion as far as, how do you stand out in this job market? And today we're going to give you the hiring manager's perspective. So we have some really great tech leaders that are joining us here momentarily to give you some tips and strategies for your job search. Now, before we introduce our incredible panel, wanted to briefly introduce myself and UG. My name is Maddie 𝐘𝐨𝐮'𝐿𝐿. I'm based out of Nashville, Tennessee. I'm co-founder of Better Career along with UG, and I've recruited, designed hiring processes. I've been a hiring manager, and now as a career coach, I've really been on all sides of the career conversation. And together with UG, we've just been really passionate in helping career changers and job seekers and professionals in tech really grow their careers and land roles that they love. So that's why Better Career exists, and that's why we're here today. But I'll go ahead and pass it over, UG.
Yeah, hello everyone. My name is UG. I'm based out here in Seattle, and I'm also co-founder of Better Career. I've spent the last 15 or so years at tech companies building and leading teams. And very recently, I also co-founded a community of more than 30,000 tech professionals. The community was called Pre-Sales Collective. And through all that experience, I've just developed a really deep passion for helping people advance in their careers, helping them earn more, and ultimately improve their lives. And so that's what we do here at Better Career. And Maddie's going to tell you a little bit more about what we do.
Yeah, absolutely. So just to give some insight into how we help people and how we support tech professionals and career changers, first of all, our job search resources. So we do have a weekly newsletter where we share tips and strategies for your job search. And then we also host events like this. So we've got an incredible panel today, and we've got another one upcoming here at the beginning of June. I will talk about this at the very end of our session, but these are free resources designed to help you in your job search. And then secondly, we we also do one-on-one coaching. So we do job search strategy, and then as well as career development. So helping you land a promotion, grow your career, grow as a leader. And this is an area that we really love in, working one-on-one with professionals. And then lastly, we have our flagship program. This is our Job Accelerator program, where we have a community and training and job search strategy that we have put together over the last year. And we have around, I think over almost 200 individuals within this program, and really have loved in building a community. UG previously led a community. And so in growing a job search and career development focused community has just been such a rewarding aspect of what we do here. So ultimately, a better career. We're all about helping you build a better career and a better life. Now that's just a little bit about how we help people and what we do. But now we're going to get into the fun part of today and introduce our panelists. So I'm going to go ahead and welcome them to this stage. And while they're coming up on board, just wanted to share that as you have questions for our panelists, please add them in the comments below. We are going to do a live Q&A towards the end of the session. So if you have questions about your job search or anything based off of what our panelists say, please add them in the comments throughout today's session. All right. So welcome, panelists. Thank you so much for joining us here today. So excited to kick off this conversation. And thank you for being willing to share your wisdom with the rest of us. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Mark. Why don't we just start with introductions and let the audience know a little bit about yourself?
What's up? Yeah, I'm Mark. I am a longtime fellow employee with Yuji Higashi at Outreach, and a fanboy of all things Higashi, just so you know. And currently, I just wrapped up a stint as a CRO of Catalyst and helped them get acquired by 𝐘𝐚𝐭 and their PE partner, Great Hill Partners. And I'm currently working on a few projects and having fun being a dad.
Yeah, I love it. I saw on your LinkedIn that currently your title for right now is Chief Fun Officer, CFO, which I really love. It's very creative.
Let's go. That's fun.
Yeah, we're excited to hear what's next. All right, Krishna, what about you?
Yeah, it's nice to be here on this panel. My name is Krishna, and I actually lead a solution engineering team. For people who don't know what solution engineering means, is we are a set of technical experts on the pre-sales side of things, helping sales leaders such as Mark close big deals with customers. And I've been with Salesforce for 9 years, and through those 9 years, I've helped mentor, coach, and hire many SEs onto our teams. So that's why I'm here.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a little biased, but pre-sales is a really, really great role. For those who have never heard of it, it's something worth looking into. All right, last but not least, Danielle, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, it's great to be here. I'm Danielle. I'm based in Seattle. I'm the head of success and support at Common Room, which is a customer intelligence platform, which means we capture all the buying signals and make it easy for sellers and post-sales teams to reach out to the right people at the right time. And I've been working here for a couple years, actually, before we even launched our product to be generally available. And I've helped build out the post-sales team from scratch. So hiring across CSMs, support, and onboarding as well, and continuing to grow, which is exciting.
Wonderful. And a fun fact for those who don't know, Mark and Danielle both used to work with UG at Outreach. So the fan club is actually pretty big, myself included, on the UG train. All right. Well, let's go ahead and get started. I mean, one thing that I mentioned earlier that we all know that it's a really competitive job market. So we have a lot of incredible candidates that are out there searching for their next opportunity. And so I think it would be great to give our audience a little bit of the behind the scenes. What is that like as a hiring manager? So Danielle, I know you've hired a ton and you're about to hire some more. Would love to know, what is that process for you as a hiring manager?
Yeah, it's been crazy. For the past year, I've been recruiting, like I mentioned, for all these different roles. And most recently, we actually have a CSM position posted. And just to give you a sense of the volume of applications, we had over 2,000 people apply. And as a hiring manager, it's really difficult to sort through all of those different resumes and just understand who's going to be a good fit on paper. So I really lean on like referrals through my network or through colleagues. ultimately I'm doing a lot of recruiting as well. Like I'm going on LinkedIn, finding people who I think would be a good fit, and asking them to have conversations. And then I also get a lot of messages on LinkedIn. And so I am looking through those, and the ones that catch my eye are the ones that have a very specific note to why they would be a good fit at Common Room. And so, yeah, it's a lot of sorting through all these different candidates and not just looking at their resume, but looking for like signals of why they would be a good fit specifically for my team. And then through the evaluation, I spend a lot of time with candidates and, really digging into like if they would be a good fit here. So I do invest a lot of time personally in the interview process, which I'm sure we'll get more into. But then, when it comes to the end, I was thinking about the rejection component of it. And I really want to hire potentially anyone who I talk to. And so I'm really doing that discovery. But if it's not the right fit, that rejection is hard. And ultimately, sometimes candidates decide that, it's not a good time or they have another offer. And so the rejection's hard on our end too, because we want to hire, we want to grow our team, and we're just looking for the best people.
Yeah, no, definitely. I would love to dive in really quickly. A follow-up question. You mentioned you had over 2,000 applications for that one CSM role. When you saw kind of some of those come through, did you see a high volume that were, qualified, or were a lot of those maybe ones that just, weren't a fit whatsoever?
Yeah, so, a decent amount are not a fit, just because we do get just a lot of applications, like clicking a button through LinkedIn. So that's why I don't just sort through the resumes, and it does take a lot of time to sort through, given people are not necessarily a fit. But it's the people who are actively looking for the role or want to work at Common Room and didn't just click a button to apply. Those are the people that stand out to me.
Yeah, no, appreciate that clarification. And what's interesting too is, Common Room is an organization that is on the smaller end that's really growing right now. And so you're getting a high volume. And now, Krishna, I know you're at Salesforce, which is a much bigger organization. I'm curious, from your end, what does that hiring process look like? Are you seeing kind of that same volume of applications on your end?
Yeah, definitely the process is very similar. I think the volume is way higher because when you build a big company and you have a big brand, everyone wants to apply and get a role there. So, but with bigger companies, the advantage is that I also have more resources to help me through the process. So there is an entire recruitment team that is focused just on my segment and my territory. And so they help sort through some of those resumes. But to Danielle's point, what I always go back to, it's all about prioritization, right? And we're always working on a timeline. What people don't know necessarily is there is always a tight timeline to close headcount. And so we are always doing a lot more. And it's actually very taxing on our day job because we are always hiring, right? So what happens is we have to figure out a prioritization mechanism. So I always go back to my warm pipeline, and the warm pipeline is something we always have to continue to build. And that's where we speak to people who have reached out with genuine interest. We get referrals, to what Danielle said, or we also keep in touch with other candidates who we may not have hired in the previous cycles, but are good for the role, right? Sometimes what happens is we have very good candidates across the whole panel that we do at the end of our cycle, but we can only hire for one position, and so we really have to fight very big battles, both with ourselves and with our teams and with the candidate, to say, okay, hey, unfortunately we took this one candidate, but we still want to keep you warm for the next hiring cycle, right? So for example, the candidate that I just hired on my team, I found them through another hiring cycle I was part of. So as leaders, we also join other leaders' hiring panels as coaches, as another person for the evaluation. And so that is another source for us as well. So whenever candidates are in a hiring cycle, start to think about how do we continue relationships outside of that, right? Because we are all coaches at heart anyway.
Yeah. I love that you're mentioning as far as, maybe folks that don't make it this time are candidates for the next time. And Danielle, you mentioning kind of reaching out to people and going beyond just the applications that you're getting. I think that really underscores the importance of, the networking and building relationships with hiring decision makers. And that, one opportunity may not be the end of the story if it's not a fit or not, you're not the right candidate right then. It could be something that, happens down the line. We've seen that time and time again. So I think, it's a good reminder, I think, for candidates to really build relationships with the hiring team, because even if it's, not that role, it could be the next role when the next role opens up. Now, Mark, I know you have an extensive experience within sales and hiring sales folks. I'm curious, from your perspective within the application process, what makes someone, stand out from the rest, as in you want to pluck their resume and get on a call with them?
Well, first of all, I'll never pluck a resume because I haven't looked at a resume in 15 years. So that won't happen. I also don't look at the emails the ATS sends me with all the people that have applied. The only way that somebody gets into my queue, where I reach out to the recruiters and I say, listen, this person needs a meeting, is if they find their way to me. And since I hire for sales, it's very simple for someone to show me their prospecting and sales skills and their approach of how they're trying to sell me on giving them an interview. So I'm looking for, and it's funny, I was hiring an SDR leader at Catalyst, and I got a lot of pushback and a lot of pissed off people, and some people that said I was doing something illegal, because I said, listen, I'm going to put y'all in control of who gets the interview, not some recruiter that's just going to thumb through a bunch of resumes and hope it's right. If you can get to me in a meaningful way, I will give you an interview. And I had about 700 people reach out to me. I think the first day I got 150 phone calls with voicemails. I got several hundred emails, LinkedIn DMs. I mean, it became a full-time job dealing with this. But I had 3 people that got to me on the phone. I answered the call. They got to me on text. They sent me an interesting text. They got to me on email, and they got to me on social. 4 channels an SDR leader was able to capture my attention. And I didn't realize it was the same person until they'd be like, oh, got you on all 4 channels. And I'll be like, this person knows what they're doing. So I think that if you are a candidate and you want to meet with somebody like Krishna or Danielle, what is a job skill that you can demonstrate to earn yourself a interview? Go do that. Like for Danielle, she's a success leader, like having an empathetic, data-driven, supportive type of communication that gets her attention and takes her time off of her busy day to focus on one little piece of her machine, that is in trouble. I think that kind of approach will get Danielle's attention. If you're going after Krishna and it's a pre-sales solutions engineer type of person, like you're very technical, like what could I do that show my technical expertise while at the same time selling Krishna on why they should do an interview? That's the creative stuff that has always worked for me. And then there's a tried and true, like go to somebody I know and trust and tell them to give me a recommendation. And that, if you're not doing that, then you're not really trying to get the job right now.
Yeah. I love that you mentioned that candidate reached out to you on 4 different channels. And I'm curious, you said they sent you an interesting text. Do you remember maybe what was the opening for that you could share?
100%. Best sales text I ever got. You know what it was? 2 words. Knock, knock. And I was like, what is this? I said, who's there? And then she had this awesome little joke about sales, and it was a knock, knock joke. And I'm like, okay, that was really good. She's like, yeah, I'm just picking up my kid. And, so weird. They're playing Post Malone. Well, it's out there that I used to crank Post Malone in the outreach office. And then we got into a weird conversation about 7-year-olds listening to Post Malone and the fact that I can whistle Post Malone rap songs. Guess what? Interview. That's what I'm talking about.
That's incredible. And clearly she did a lot of research in order to have that, be able to bring up the Post Malone song. That's great.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So that's like an example. Like that's somebody that I didn't want to talk to. I needed to talk to that person. It wasn't an interview. It was an interview, but it wasn't an interview. It was like, wow, this person has some magic to them. And it ended up not being a fit for some differences in how we think about leadership. But I really respected her perspective and how she went about it. But could she do the job? I had no doubt she could do the job and teach people how to do the job. And it was just now like, is she a cultural fit? Does her mental model work the way I want it to? And those sorts of things versus, do I even know if this person can do their job? Which is like 9 times out of 10, most interviews end with the interviewer not having any idea whether you can do the job or not. They're really basing you on the first 45 seconds, what you looked like, how you answered the first question, what your tone and demeanor were, what kind of nervous tics you had, and all those subconscious things that just help you form an opinion about somebody. Like, Maddie, she's all right. And when they really have no idea how good you are at the job, it's just that's their natural lizard brain thing, like trying to assess, like, is this person dangerous or a threat or not?
Yeah. I loved what you called out as far as, showing them you can do the job by basically, prospecting you as the hiring manager. And I think you gave some great tips too, as far as like approaching Danielle or Krishna. And Danielle and Krishna, to put you on the spot, I didn't ask you to prepare for this in advance. But have you had a message kind of similar to what Mark's talking about, as someone that you absolutely had to get back to, that you can think of, top of mind? And it's okay if not, we can always come back to it.
I did have one person reach out to me, and we ended up hiring them. And this is probably a couple of years ago, but they basically said, hey, they did a lot of research on what I'm interested in as well. And to Mark's point, it stems from curiosity, right? And curiosity is a very important skill for any sales role. Are you curious about this person I'm selling to, or are you curious about practically everything? Right? And so they sent me a text on LinkedIn, and I usually try to reach people on LinkedIn because that's the easiest way to do it. But they said, hey, I thought this would be interesting to you. I did this project on X and XY, and I already met you once in Pre-Sales Collective, but I hadn't actually remembered that from that meeting somehow, or that Slack channel. So, and then I said, okay, and then they gave me a short video. They sent me a video of a demo, and that's what Mark was really, alluding to. And immediately I saw they were able to do great demos, deliver a compelling message, and really sell their skill, right? And that was really helpful.
Wow. And you ended up hiring them? Is that what you said?
Correct. Yeah. And they're no longer on my team, but a different team. But wow. This is very helpful.
No, that's a great example. Thanks for sharing. Danielle, what about you? Anything come top of mind?
Yeah, I had someone reach out to me for this CSM role, and it was such a short, clear message that was that connected us based on a mutual connection. But then she had said, like, I saw your value of make it happen. And that's exactly what I'm doing here. And here's why. And that really stood out to me, of someone who, and this is something I definitely hire for, it has this sense of ownership and control. And it just really resonated with me. And so that's one of the few, cold LinkedIn messages that I took a conversation and she was going through the interview process.
Yeah, that's great. Tying it back to the value, giving that value pitch as well. So these are, great examples of where it's been successful. So, we've talked about some things about, here's the right things to do, but you can also do the wrong thing. So Danielle, I would love your perspective. What are maybe some common pitfalls or job seeker behaviors that would potentially raise a red flag for you that people should avoid?
Yeah, there's a couple. And I feel like maybe they sound simple, but you'd be surprised about how often people don't do these little things. And I would say, number one, not following up the same day after your interview, sending an email that is personally crafted based on your conversation, not just to me, but anyone else who you interviewed with. That's number one. Number two would be not following instructions on a prompt. So I think we all do a presentation style interview, and in our CSM presentation, it's a business review, and they have to send me the deck a day ahead of time. People surprisingly don't do that all the time. And unfortunately, that is something that really disqualifies them if they aren't following the instructions on the prompt. And then I'd say another one, I'm really transparent about compensation, and our salary ranges are on our job descriptions. And I like to have that conversation up front because I don't want either of us to waste our time if it's not going to be a good fit in terms of your expectations around the pay. And so a lot of times I'll talk to the candidates up front and they'll confirm that the range it's within range. And then we get to later conversations and that changes. And that's something that is, it's a trust thing, right? Like if you're saying something in the beginning of the interview and at the end, it's no longer true. Of course, things can change, but I would expect the candidate to come to me and be proactive about communicating that, not waiting for the offer and to kind of change the line at that point. So that's something that at the very end, when you think that this candidate is going to work out, it's something that erodes trust. So I'd say those three come to mind.
Yeah. Well, I feel like a lot of people, job seekers that are on the call are probably giving you a round of applause for the fact that you're so transparent about the salary range up front. I know people, really appreciate that. And sometimes it can be a mystery as a job seeker. So I love that approach. And I absolutely understand, wanting that mutual kind of respect of being transparent up front and also wanting that out of candidates. So I appreciate that perspective a lot.
Hey, Maddie.
Yeah.
I think it is important to point out people that hide comp are hiding a lot of other stuff. Like, why would you not tell somebody how much they're going to get paid for something so that they know if it's worth applying or not? That blows my mind. I don't understand it, especially when I can go call 4 people at that company and figure out how much they make anyway. Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah. Or I don't know how much you all have seen the ranges that are, like sometimes like 300,000. The range will be that far on the job description, which I think is always very humorous. I mean, terrible, but humorous to see that. Now kind of thinking too, as far as, the volume of candidates, Danielle, Krishna, you both mentioned having a crazy amount of volume of candidates. And so it does seem like hiring managers kind of have their pick of the litter. They can be really selective and, even beyond the job description. So I'm curious, Mark, what's your perspective on maybe the top 2 to 3 qualities that you look for kind of early on in the hiring process?
Yeah. So I think that this is, I can share what mine are, but mine are always very contextual to the job and the company and the growth stage and all of this kind of stuff. Like what I asked when I first started hiring people in my first sales job where I sold, basically commodity items to schools or led a team that did that, is very different than what I would interview somebody for when I was looking for a seller at Catalyst or at Outreach, right? So I'll share some stuff, but like I think that this is an extremely important exercise for interviewers to determine what these things are and then find unique ways to assess whether someone has those qualities or skills in an interview process. And honestly, like that's the number one place where this all falls flat is interviewers aren't prepared. But like, here's what I would do is I have like kind of a 3 things that are really important to me. One is work ethic. So I've figured out a way to look for work ethic. The second one is curiosity. And there's 2 types of curiosity. There's internal curiosity. Why do we do it that way? Why is our product the best? Why does our competitor do it like this and we do it like that? And then external curiosity. Why does Krishna think this is a problem? Why is Krishna focused on this problem right now? And then the last thing is making a connection, which is you take what you learn from internal curiosity and external curiosity, and you use it to help help somebody figure out like, this is why I have a problem, right? And this is why a potential solution is working. I think a lot of buyers have lost the ability to do that. So you have to be very explicit with your connection making. So, but other than that, like I would say the number one thing I need to know about a sales rep is, are they coachable? And so I have a strong way where I do an interview for assessing coachability. I think I can, with 100% accuracy, figure out if somebody's coachable or not in about 8 minutes. But that's those are the kind of my formula of general things. And then a specific thing that is like, I found just crucial for working for me in a sales org.
Yeah. Mark, you've piqued my curiosity there. You said 100% accuracy. Could you just give us like tiny bit insight into
Sure.
what that interview looks like? I'm just curious.
Yeah. So when I sit down with the seller and I'll say something like this, Maddie, hey, I'm sure you get one objection way more than any other objection all throughout your sales cycle. Like, what is that? What is the objection that you get the most? And they'll say price, or we have a solution already. All right, cool. That's great. Because it's a objection you get all the time, I'm sure that you have a way of dealing with that. Like, would you mind if we did a role play real quick? I just want to see how you do with that. This is assessment number one, the nonverbal reaction to requesting a role play. Some people will actually cross their arms and sit back. That's already a sign to me that they may not be comfortable. Some people actually like lean forward and they're like, all right, let's go. So
Wow.
I look for the nonverbal. Then I say, hey, you know what, Maddie, like, you know, you did a great job. We really like your product. Your CEO was awesome. Thanks for the introduction. But you know what? You're just too expensive. So we need to go with this other vendor that we've been looking at. And then they say whatever they say, right? Then this is where I get to the next part is I don't care if they do well in that objection handling or not. That's more of a function of their training and how they're brought up. What I care about is then when I ask the next question, hey, would you mind if I give you a little coaching on that? Again, I'm looking for the nonverbals. I've had people pull out a notebook with a pencil to write down notes in the interview because they're so much centered on how, like, growing and learning and being coachable. And then I say, you know, I can always find something. Well, you know, in your objection handling, it was really good. Like, this was great. This is great. But you know what? You didn't ask a clarifying question. It's like, that actually wasn't my objection. If you'd have asked me a clarifying question, blah, 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 blah. Would you mind, Maddie, if we redid that and just try out and like see what it feels like to ask that question? And so again, I'm looking for the nonverbal. And then what I do is I say, you know, do the same little role play. And then I see, do they do the coaching or not? And I'm not seeing if they do it well. Some people will crush it. And it's like, oh my God, they just learned it that fast. Those people are good.
Yeah.
There's people that will not be able to do it the new way at all. And they just revert to the way they know. Those are non-hires. The person I love to hire is a person that can't quite get it. They're struggling with it. You can feel the gears in their turn, like their gears in their brain, like they're trying to get there and they're giving it their best shot. I love those people. Those are people that want to do it and they realize that breaking patterns of behavior are hard, but you can feel them enjoying and engaging in the work of doing that. Those are my favorite people to hire. So within 7 minutes, I can do that whole process. And if I see 2 or 3 nonverbal cues that say that you're not coachable, and then I don't feel the brain breaking thing, then I know immediately you're not coachable because you won't be able to. I just tried to coach you and you wouldn't let me.
Yeah. Wow. I love that. I appreciate you walking that through. And I can absolutely understand, you know, how you're actually assessing that coachability of the candidate. And it sounds like it's gotten you really good results in the past.
Yeah, no, listen, you know, I think that hiring might be a little bit like baseball. If you get 3 out of 10 right, you're a Hall of Famer. Maybe that's a little bit conservative, but yeah, listen, I've gotten a lot more wrong than I've gotten right, I think.
Hey, hiring's complicated. It really is. It's never perfect. So what I heard from you, Mark, is, you know, work ethic, curiosity, coachability. Krishna, I'm curious on your end, you know, what are some of those qualities that are, you know, absolutely must-haves for candidates on your team?
Actually, it's exactly those. I was thinking about this earlier as well, because there's always ways to figure out, you know, what skills you bring to the role. And it's very hard to distinguish candidates based on their experience doing the things that you're hiring for. So it really comes down to those 2 things, curiosity and coachability. And an interesting thing about curiosity is that it is very hard for me as a leader to coach somebody to be curious, right? And that is why I start to think about, okay, is this person already demonstrating curiosity? Because that is making my life easier, because they're already curious. They will start to learn things on their own if they're in the role, right? So it's really hard to coach, but it's for every sales role, curiosity is the number 1 core skill that you need to bring to the table. And coachability is the second one. And I'm very big on coachability. I think of coachability as 3 things, or 3 Ds, if you may. One is, does the candidate have a desire to learn, right? And desire is, again, something you can't coach. Are they genuinely interested to learn for a better, never best attitude? Second is demonstrated excellence. So if you think about, okay, does this candidate have examples of some great things they've already accomplished, some great ways they've actually demonstrated how they learned something and did something very well? And those are the questions we typically ask in our interview as well. And the third D is all around, do they have a drive to solve problems, right? Because end of the day, if you strip away all of the things on your job requirements, all of us are trying to solve a problem or many problems, right? And so do they have, do they take these challenges as opportunities, and do they have a process for problem solving? And process is something, there's no right or wrong. There's just different ways to solve a problem. But do they approach it that way? Do they have a process? So it's really those 3 Ds in terms of coachability: desire to learn, demonstrated excellence, and then the third one is a drive to solve problems.
Wow.
That's it.
That is excellent. If you haven't already written a blog on the 3 Ds of coachability, please do and share it with all of us, because what an excellent kind of a way to, really break that down. And I think that way that's really going to resonate with people. So I appreciate that, Krishna. Now, Danielle, I would love to know, on your end, when it comes to the qualities that you're looking for, how do candidates effectively demonstrate that to you? So if you're looking for kind of maybe, similar to that curiosity or work ethic, or, value focus, how do candidates demonstrate that to you?
Yeah, the biggest thing is storytelling. So being able to not just tell me about a skill, but show me that you've done the work. And so I'm a really big fan of the STAR method, which is situation, task, action, result, and preparing your stories in that way. I think it really organizes the story and organizes candidates and allows them to study and practice that in advance. And once you have that framework and structure and you get asked a question, whether it's a behavioral question, like tell me about a time, or not, you can really take any answer that you have and of course, respond to the question, but ultimately give the example behind that. So it's really all about storytelling, and the storytelling also tells me that you did come prepared, and you've worked to come up with those stories that would be relevant to this job and what you're interviewing for.
I appreciate that you call out the STAR method too, because a lot of times, when we're working with candidates and talking about using this as a way to, prepare, it's not just something that you want to use for, your own sake, but also it's something that hiring managers are literally looking for. So I love that you're thinking about storytelling and you're looking to see, like, are they telling this in an effective way? Did they use a framework or such that's going to help them do that and focus on probably the parts that you care about the most?
Yeah, totally. And it keeps people on track, right? A lot of times you can have a story, but you might get off track or it might be really long. And like, if you do that practice and have it within a framework, it's really concise and clear what you're trying to get across.
Yes. And being concise is so hard, oftentimes. So yeah. Now, when it comes to your actual interview process, you alluded to a few different pieces of it, one of which, bringing that exercise. What does that process look like kind of from start to end?
Yeah, so the first step is a conversation with me, the hiring manager conversation. The next is more of like a skills-based interview with a member of the team. So if it's the CSM role, you're interviewing with one of the CSMs on my team and you're digging into, do you have the experience that we're looking for, whether it's, renewals, business reviews, all those types of day-to-day functions of the CSM. And then from there, it's a presentation. So for CSMs, it's a mock executive business review of whatever product you want. So we want to see you in your element and know how you've done this in the past and done it successfully. For other roles like support, it's a technical exam. And then it's after that, it's a full interview loop. And that's with a lot of different people at Common Room, but it's people from our leadership, cross-functional like sales, and then a values interview as well, where we're looking to see if you fit within our values and culture.
Yeah. And where do you find most people are kind of weeded out, if you will?
It's the presentation. One. Yeah. So that one is the hardest because it is it's a relatively open-ended prompt. And again, I want to see how people like present, how they prepare, if they're asking me questions as well, if they actually seek out coaching for the business review, back to the coachability, that's actually a really good sign. And then ultimately it's how they presented the data, and can they tell a story with data? And I think that's the hardest part of the business review.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Mark, you're on the sales side of things. I'm curious, what has that process looked like, or how does it differ from Danielle's?
Which process is that? I'm sorry, I missed it.
Oh, sorry. Just interview process. So as far as like starting with the recruiter, you already talked about the coachability role play that you do in your interview, but I'm just curious, like what kind of start to end, what does that process look like?
Yeah, so there's the recruiter that does the screener. I usually require the hiring manager to have the first call after the screen. If they pass through the hiring manager, then there's usually 4 or 5 people that they talk to. There's maybe like a cultural one. But what I really like to do is be like, all right, here are our 6 core competencies that we care about. And I have each interviewer become a master at 2 of them. Like I'm a master at interviewing for coachability and work ethic. I had another friend, another guy that we'd hire together named Alex Kremer. Alex Kremer we came up with a way for him to measure grit and the ability to transfer passion, right? And so that was really important at Outreach when we were creating a category. We had to get people passionate about our product. So that was an important competency that we needed people to have. And so every interviewer has to be really, really good and prove to me they have a unique and interesting way to determine in an interview if somebody has that competency or not, similar to what I just did with the coachability thing. And then they need to have a third one that they're pretty good at. And then what I do is in those 4 or 5 interviews, I try to overlap a couple competencies, and then we get together and we have a little roundup. And the hiring manager, like I'm not I don't ever tell a hiring manager who to hire. If I have to do that, then you shouldn't be a hiring manager. Part of the job of a manager is to be a really great talent assessor and hire the right people. So I let people make their mistakes, and so we get together in that little thing, and then everybody has a vote in there, and then it's up to the hiring manager to make the final decision. And so that's what that's what I've always done. But I'll say this is there is the process of the institution and the person. And I think a way for a candidate to stand out is to, in some ways, slightly dictate what my process is to interview you, not just for you to interview me and dictate to me 6 meetings. I got to give half an hour of my time each for 3 hours just so you can figure things out. And that's where I was talking about earlier. Like they come back and they're like, hey, everybody that does this stuff, like I said, with me, the creative stuff, they skip the screener. So now they're out of process, right? And they might go back into the process later, whatever, but you want to be out of the process, but having conversations as a candidate, not in the process with everybody else having conversations. That just means that you're part of the herd. Like get out of the herd and figure out a way to have conversations that are outside the process. Don't feel like it's your job to follow their hiring process. It's your job to dictate how you get hired process.
So earlier you mentioned, people reaching out directly to you, basically prospecting you. Is there another example of how candidates should be doing that to kind of take, more of the driver's seat?
Yeah. So I had a candidate one time that went to my 4 top sellers and took all of them out to lunch and figured out everything about what was wrong with the product, what was great with the product, what we supplied well as a sales org, what we were missing as a sales org, what their pet peeves were, what tooling we had, blah, 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 blah. And then a person just sent me an email. He's like, hey, I just got done talking to Hank Wells, Raleigh Devine, Brian Gerard, and Pleasant Rich. You know what? Here's what I have questions about now. Whoa, power move. That's somebody that is actually really trying to do a good job. Wonder what else they'll do a good job with. And so like that was an awesome way to get out of the cycle. It was an email I wasn't expecting. It was conversations that were outside of the hiring committee, but they were doing what they needed to do in order to have a conversation with me that they would normally not get, because, at some point I quit doing interviewing reps. Right. But if you did something like that, I'm having a conversation with you.
Wow. Yeah, I love that you brought the networking approach. We recently had someone that networked with the entire team. They didn't take them out to lunch. It was all over Zoom, but that was how ultimately that candidate got the attention of the hiring manager, was networking with the entire team and really learning about the product and then coming to that hiring manager with that kind of information. So it can be a great way to stand out. Now, I know there are some organizations.
Here's another cool. Here's another, oh, sorry, you cut out for a second there. Here's another cool story is I had a girl named Grace Presnick, who's still one of the best AEs at Outreach. And she called a few reps and found out what my daily routine was. And I would drive to the office from 5:30 to 6 a.m. Guess what I'm doing during that time? Listening to an audiobook or listening to a podcast. Guess what I'm never get from 5:30 to 6 a.m.? A phone call. Well, I get a phone call at like 5:40 a.m. Of course, I'm picking it up like, hey, what's up? And then she proceeds to say, hey, Mark, this is Grace. You don't know me. I've been following you on LinkedIn, this, and this. Boom. Immediate interview. Flew her out to Seattle. She crushed the interviews and is still one of the greatest reps at Outreach. So just another example of like, get out of the hiring process and get into your I'm going to get hired process.
Yeah. Wow. What a story. That's great. And I would say, yeah, for, sales folks like BDRs, SDRs, AEs, cold calling is absolutely 100% do it. Clearly Mark is a great example, testament to a hiring manager and a tech leader that, responds well to that when you do it creatively and, you take the extra effort to do it in a way that is actually going to get him to pick up the phone or answer your text. But definitely, if you haven't started doing that and you're a traditional kind of full-blown sales role, that's a great route to take. Now, Krishna, would love your perspective. We've talked a little bit about the CSM kind of hiring process, a common room, and, Mark's prior process. Now, for more of a pre-sales or solutions engineering role at Salesforce, I know there is that demo presentation round, and, that can take a lot of preparation and can be nerve-wracking for candidates. What are the ones that, stand out, do differently in that process?
Yeah. And can I just add to what Mark was saying earlier as well? I think getting out of the process and doing a bunch of curious learning about how things work with this particular person, with this particular company, that product helps you do two things as a candidate in the hiring process. You can actually interview the hiring manager about all of those things that you learned. And that shows curiosity as well. As much as we are trying to hire you, you should also try to hire or see if we are a fit, because that is where, great relationships and great careers happen, right? Because, and a lot of times what I see is candidates assume a lot of things about a particular role, about a particular company, and they don't ask enough questions to see if it is a fit for them, right? And that is, again, what Danielle brought up, is in the later stages of the process, if those things come up, it kind of feels like a breach of trust. And so it's always better to do like a reverse interview on some level to understand the fit for the role, right? So I just wanted to add that. But coming back to our panel process, I think great panels that I've seen have done, again, three things very well, right? One is typically throughout the panel process, there is a peer coach that we assign, right? There is somebody who is part of our current team that is going to help this candidate go through the panel. And the best panels I've seen have always leveraged that coach very well. And the way I say that is they're asking great questions. They've figured out how to effectively use the coach to improve their presentation, get feedback, ask a lot of questions to understand what good looks like, right? And that demonstrates both curiosity and that coachability angle of things. The second is there's always some must-haves for the panel presentation, and then there's some nice-to-haves that come out of the prep calls. And a lot of 100% of the candidates cover the must-haves, right? Especially with a very prescriptive process that we have. Almost every panel covers everything we need to see, but there's only few panel or candidates who actually do the extra credit work, right? And those really stand out. when you're really putting thought into how do I make this better and how do I do a little more than what I've been asked for, it shows that work ethic. It shows that, again, curiosity and drive to solve those problems. And so that stands out as well. And the last one is authenticity. One of the things that the latest panel that I've observed, and we actually hired the candidate, they did something very cool. They made that entire presentation their own. We give them a sample deck, and again, 100% of the candidates use that sample deck as it is. This candidate completely changed everything in that deck. They changed the flow, they made it their own, they added their own personality into the mix to make it a very compelling presentation, right? So authenticity really stands out. Be authentic, be yourself, and show that off with confidence.
Yeah. Wow. I love that as far as highlighting authenticity, because it's not just about saying the right things. It's also in the way you deliver, in the way that you make it your own. I'm curious, Danielle, have you kind of seen something similar? I mean, do you have some people that are maybe very rigid or very staged and maybe that's not as compelling as others?
Yeah. I love the candidates that we always ask some questions like outside of the role play at the end. And so I tend to ask, like, is this exactly your template? And it really shows the people who have taken what they're supposed to do and have added something that's creative or their own touch because they thought it would better resonate, not just with the prompt, but actually their customers. Like they would do this on their own. And even one candidate was like, yeah, I came up with this deck from scratch. Like I built this process and this is how, and I rolled it out to the team. So the people who, take something and change it and make it their own because they know it's going to better resonate are definitely the ones that stand out. And on the other hand, there are people who don't personalize the deck, right? It says like, insert your name here or insert logo here. And those, you just know that person didn't prep and put in the effort that was needed for that interview.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that absolutely makes sense. Now I do want to I'm paying attention to time and I do want time for, our open Q&A. So I'm going to go ahead and move to kind of our final question for the panel before we open that Q&A. And, when it comes to this just insane competitive job market that we're in now, like what would be here's 1 to 2 things to do differently to be successful in your job search for our audience? Let's see. Anyone want to start off the go, or I can call on someone too. Krishna's coming off mute.
Yeah, I just came off mute. I think it's also something I'm learning, right? And I think one thing that always stands out is networking and being genuinely curious, right? It's a very competitive market. There's a lot of people looking for the same jobs you are, but really asking great questions and trying to understand where your value is the first step, right? So network, figure out, if this is the right, place, and all of those things is, in terms of networking, is very important for you to develop a strong point of view on how you can be better. If you don't ask questions, if you assume a lot of things, you can never build a better perspective.
Yeah. No, that's great. Danielle, what about you? Yeah,
I can jump in. I would say like on the application process, similar to what we've been talking about, but finding a way to reach me. And really demonstrating that you'd be an asset to the team. And I think there's also a difference in being personal in that reach out and specific, right? You can say something that you saw on my LinkedIn and try to make a personal note, but if you're specific to why you would be a good fit for this role and at Common Room, then that really captures my attention. So finding that way, whether it's through networking or a call or a LinkedIn message, finding that way to stand out to get that first meeting. And then on the interview side, Mark and Krishna have talked a lot about the qualities they look for, but I would say one of the top ones for me is the ability to demonstrate ownership. And you can do this throughout the entire, at different stages of the interview process, but it's really about, do you have control over your destiny, right? Like over the fact that you are applying for this job, you want this job, right? Is it changing the interview process for yourself? Or is it kind of showing that as you would jump into the job, you would be able to like control your day to day and really be successful in an environment, especially in a startup where not everything is consistent day to day. And so that really
Yeah.
stands out as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's another great one. All right, last but not least, Mark. Oh, you're on mute.
Rookie move. Listen, I think that I've been posting a lot about this recently, and I don't know if it's hitting people yet, but like there's one way to get people's attention, and that's your creativity. And if you're not ready to amp up your creativity, then you might not be ready to look for a job, because the only way that you're going to separate yourself from, you know, what was it, Danielle, 200 applications is
2000.
to have some sort of, how many?
2000, yeah.
2,000. The only way to stand out is to be creative. You think that recruiter went through all 2,000 people? You're crazy. If you think that they accurately assessed which 2,000 should actually make it through by looking at job applications and all that, you're crazy. All right. So then you're at the mercy of them randomly picking you, or being in a queue early enough that when they decided to quit, you made it through. Right. So like be creative and get out of their hiring process and get in your to be hired. And the second thing is very simple. Just be you, damn it. Like if nobody wants to hire some version of you that didn't show up in the interview process, and you don't want to work for somebody that thinks that they hired someone different. And I understand like a job is important. And listen, I got 4 kids and mouths to feed and college to pay for and all that kind of stuff. So I'm very sympathetic to the need for income and all that. But like, I think that you need to make sure that you are like uncompromisingly you, and not adapting yourself to create a person that they want to hire. They either want to hire you or they don't. What you don't want to do is to put on your job hat every day to be the job person to match the person that you created in the interview. That's too much mental distraction or whatever, and locks you into something that you're not. So just be you, like do your thing, do your thing.
Yeah, a great reminder, bringing that authenticity, being yourself it's an important part of the process. Absolutely. Well, these are great tips. I'm hearing, taking ownership, demonstrating value, showcasing your skills, taking initiative, that coachability, and even storytelling. These are all things that I think a lot of the audience can take and start implementing in their job search. Now, we definitely want to make time for some of those Q&A. So I'm going to invite Yuji to come back up here on the stage with us, and we're going to start tackling some of your questions. So if you haven't asked it already, or if you have another, please add it to the chat below.
Yeah, please do add the comments or any questions you have in the comments, and we'll make sure we get them answered. I guess one question that I'm pondering, because it came up in one of our workshops or working sessions, our group coaching sessions that we had yesterday with our community, and I'd love to get your all's perspective on, is if you're talking to somebody that, or interviewing somebody that has a gap in employment, right? Maybe they've been they were laid off 3 months ago, 6 months ago, and you're interviewing that candidate. Like, what is your perspective on how's best for them to handle talking about that gap? That's something that a lot of folks out there are experiencing right now. So from the hiring manager perspective, I just love to get your perspective on, if you've had conversations with candidates that have had a gap that they've had to talk through, or like what would you look for in how they would kind of respond and explain that gap?
So are you saying, Yuji, like I interview somebody that hasn't worked for 8 months and they're nervous about it?
Yeah, exactly.
I would say like the 8 months doesn't matter. What matters is you're nervous about it. Like if you got laid off 8 months ago and you've been working hard to find a new job and it's taking you 8 months, like big whoop. If you decided to take 8 months off to take care of your grandma who was dying, great for you. If you took it off because you want to go on a sabbatical to Bali, awesome. Like I give a crap why you have a gap. I give a crap that you have a gap. You're probably more paranoid about it than you are. And what I start to sense is you feel scared about your answer. And now I don't trust you. So just be like, yo, I had a chance to go to Bali, lived it up. It was awesome. 8 guinea pigs, lived on the water. It was fucking dope. Like now I'm back and ready to rock. I'll be like, let's go. Tell me some more stuff about your trip, and then we're going. Like, don't be, the main thing is don't be paranoid about a gap. Just tell why it is and be done with it. And if they don't like you because you have a weird gap they don't like, you don't want to work for them.
That's good. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would definitely say honesty is important. And if you are taking a gap and not searching in that time, coming into the job market and being prepared to answer interview questions and showing up like you want that job is really important, because I've got candidates who do take a break but aren't sure if they want to come back, and that actually stands out.
Yeah. That's good. That's a good point. There's another question here. This one's for Danielle, but I think it could also apply to both Christian and Mark as well, potentially. But the question is around, like, when you hire somebody or when you are interviewing somebody maybe that doesn't have a customer success background, or for Mark or Krishna, somebody that has a experience in the role that you're hiring for, what are some things that you might look for to help them, demonstrate that they can close the gap on that lack of experience potentially?
Yeah, I love this question, because actually before I was in tech, I worked for a nonprofit. So there was a lot of transferable skills into customer success, but I didn't have the exact resume that you would pick out of a box to be a customer success manager. And so I'm really looking for your ability to storytell and tell me that your experience applies to the jobs, whether it's a renewal motion, whether it's your ability to talk to executives. Like, I am sure there are things in your current job that you could apply to customer success, and this goes for any job that you'd be interviewing for. And it's just about being able to get the conversation right. So how do you stand out, and then communicating in the interview that everything within your experience is actually customer success, is something that is transferable to the job. And I think if you can do that, you're definitely a strong candidate, because we do want to hire people who have different experiences and backgrounds and can bring different things to the table. And so that's exactly how I made the pivot as well.
Yeah, and to add to that, I think, so at least in the segment I'm in right now, which is small and medium businesses and growth businesses at Salesforce, we hire and look for people who have transferable skills outside of being an SE for a long time, right? And the way it begins is, if you have done your research, have talked to a bunch of SEs, have figured out what are your transferable skills, and you have a great message around that. And to the point around storytelling, if you can tell a good story that your skills are transferable, I will, listen day in and day out, right?
Wow.
That's great. And let's see, 60 seconds left. So last question here from Eamon is just, do you guys have a perspective on the hiring market? As far as I know, Danielle, you've been hiring quite a bit. Krishna, have you been hiring at all recently? Or is
Actually
Salesforce
not as much, but we are still, I've been backfilling people. I've been working through some changes. People are always growing at Salesforce, so there's always that.
For sure. And just from our perspective too, working with a lot of job seekers, we've seen certainly in tech hiring picking up, right? It's still very steady pace, but and there's heavier hiring in certain pockets of the tech space, but generally hiring is starting to pick up. So good question.
Eugene, I'm hiring. Yeah, if you want to join the Kosoglow family, you can pay me $100 a month, and I'll help you have fun. So I am reverse hiring if anybody wants a career in the Kosoglow family having fun.
As the chief fun officer of the Kosoglow family. That's a great note to end on, I think, here. So we're just at time.
Yeah. Well, wonderful. Thank you all so much for joining us today. And a special thank you to our incredible panelists. Really appreciate the perspectives, the examples. This was just really, really incredible. So appreciate you all taking the time and sharing just your tips, suggestions, and experiences with the rest of us. So thanks again, everyone, for joining. And we do have an upcoming another event actually at the beginning of June. So stay tuned. It's going to be a conversation of women in tech sales talking about imposter syndrome. So we would love to see you there, and we'll definitely be sharing more about that soon. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great one.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks for having us.